Not wanting to take any chances, he summoned the golden rock worm king once again. Once it was in the water, the creature arousing Hansen's curiosity saw the golden rock worm king approach. All of a sudden, it turned like an enraged bull. It charged at the golden rock worm king and smashed into it. The hit was so severe that it went careering for miles across the seabed. Even though the super pet armor was mostly concave, the golden rock worm king had almost been killed by this new foe. Hansen wasn't surprised, so he quickly called back the golden rock worm king. With powers such as that, it had to be a sacred blood creature. It seemed that it was a creature that prioritized strength above all else. Hansen guessed that it would not therefore possess any abilities that were too unusual. Hansen summoned a beast soul and dived back into the waters. He approached the lizard-scaled bull. The big bull was not only aggressive but combative, too. After he saw Hansen, it eagerly charged towards its next target. Due to it moving at great speed, a current and underwater wake followed its path. A great surf at least 10 meters high built up behind it, and made for a terrifying sight. Hansen followed the water and dashed out of the way. After dodging the bull's fierce attack, the bull let out a weird, watery moan. Then it turned around and tried to charge Hansen again. It was a frightening moment. Good timing, Hansen said to himself. He cast his latest skill Tide to battle the bull. Hansen had expended a great deal of effort in learning how to use Tide effectively, and without concerning himself with breathing, so any of his abilities could be cast naturally as the creatures he would be fighting would be underwater. He performed his underwater talents with the grace of a mermaid. Going up against this bull, there was nothing to handicap him. Dong! The ghost pod claw slashed the bull, which emitted a shower of sparks in the water. All it left, however, were 3 scuffs against the bull's lizard-like scales. It didn't cut through like Hansen had anticipated. Those are some tough scales. Hansen was surprised. He swam away to dodge the raging stampede of the bull. The next half hour was spent battling the bull. Hansen had managed to get in numerous good hits, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not draw blood. The scales were too resilient. With his yin force, he punched the bull. Moo! The bull let out a frightened cry as its mouth spewed blood. But the stubbornness of the bull did not let up, and it did not fall back. It roared like thunder, and it dashed madly towards Hansen again. He was not afraid of a creature that possessed mere brute force such as this, however. Hansen's body was like Jiaolong as he spiraled through the water. He discovered another opening and struck the rampaging bull once more. The yin force punctured the bull's body and blood gushed out of its mouth. Pow, pow, pow. A huge amount of yin force was drilling its way into the bull's body. It did not matter how strong its body was, or how resilient its scales were, nothing could withstand the yin force. The bull was being beaten to a pulp, as blood streamed from its mouth, ears and nose, and its organs had been dealt critical damage. It was by now too late for the bull to even think of retreating. It had been struck by Hansen's yin force dozens of times. The creature's heart had been mashed into jelly and its body was limp in the sea. Sacred blood creature hunted, water buffalo. The beast's soul was not acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random amount of sacred geno points, between 0 and 10. Hansen was overjoyed. He had already received the ability that enabled trouble-free underwater sacred blood battling, and all he had to do was track one down before fighting it. He no longer had to worry about a lack of resources. Hopefully, I can maximize my sacred geno points in the near future. Hansen's heart was ecstatic. Hansen was excited. Already, he was preparing to search for another high-class lonely creature of the sea. But all of a sudden, he felt goosebumps, and his chirpy mood was quashed by a foreboding sense of dread. Stop! Don't move! Hansen called out to the mermaid princess to stop the Crystal Palace. As far as they knew, the Crystal Palace was indestructible. Now that he was safely inside, there should have been no danger. But still, Hansen felt something wasn't quite right. He couldn't shake the feeling that something awful was about to occur, and because of the worry, his body kept breaking out in cold sweats. Ever since he had learnt the first tier of ice skin, his perception had heightened and its sensitivity had continued growing. Hansen was a man who put a lot of stock in his ability to perceive what was happening. He didn't move an inch. He used his eyes to peer through the windows of the Crystal Palace and into the creeping black of the deep sea. All of a sudden, a large creature appeared in Hansen's vision. It was a 30-meter-long silver shark. Its body was composed of metallic scales. As it swam, great waves followed in its wake. The giant silver shark was terrifying to look at. But after Hansen gave it a thorough look, he realized that it wasn't the crux of his anxiety. This wasn't what had made him scared. The silver shark opened its mouth, attempting to swallow a scarily large amount of fish, as if they were to be consumed by a sealing cave entrance. The fish that had felt the danger began swimming in a frantic panic. It was chaos. As this happened, Hansen caught sight of a small blue light in the distance. It was getting nearer, and as it did, the power of the blue light increased. It then began to jump strangely around. As the blue light drew nearer and nearer, the concern in Hansen's heart grew. When it finally reached a discernible distance, Hansen at last saw what it was. It was a 3-meter-tall seahorse. Its body was shining blue, as if it was wrapped in a blue, blazing flame. A giant blue seahorse. Its skin, although blue, was quite faint, faded like the bark of an old, withered tree. Its eyes were the opposite, however, sparkling like two refined sapphires. A cold blue light shone from within them. If you stared into those eyes, it would feel as if you were being drawn into a bottomless well of despair. Hansen's forehead was dripping with a cold sweat, and the droplets had already reached his cheeks. As he watched the seahorse, he did not move a muscle. That which he had feared was confirmed in the presence of this new sea creature. As the seahorse neared, the silver shark's giant body came to a standstill in the water. It then began shivering, as if it had just seen something most awful. The seahorse did not swim in haste, instead drifting steadily towards the shark. The closer the seahorse came, the more the shark shook. Still, it was locked in place, seemingly unable to move. Eventually, the seahorse reached the giant silver shark. Although the seahorse wasn't particularly small, it was dwarfed when compared to the silver shark. How strange it was to see a silver shark of that size be terrified by such a small seahorse. The metal scales that plated the shark rattled in fear. The blue seahorse took a look at the shark, then opened its mouth like a speaker. A blue flame exited its mouth, yet was not extinguished by the seawater. The flame was shot at the shark's silver scales. The small blue flame was only about the size of a fist. But when it came into contact with the shark, the entire creature lit up in flames. The blue flame raged in the water. The giant silver shark writhed in agony, but still refused to flee. The body did move, but only through convulsing from the pain it was attempting to endure. It was an unnerving scene to behold. A moment later, the giant silver shark was nothing but cinder. Here, deep below the sea, a shark had been incinerated into little more than ash. The blue flame then went out, as the dust of its victim fell to become one with the sandy seabed. Hansen, after witnessing all of this, was scared. He could not help but think, super creature. This thing must be a super creature from the second shelter. Although he had yet to witness the true strength of the seahorse, all it took was the sight of that blue flame to suggest where it had come from. While Hansen stood motionless in fear, the seahorse turned to face the window he was looking out of. All of a sudden, Hansen's body felt cold. A chill in his heart had taken root and was expanding. All the seahorse did, however, was stare. Following that, it turned tail and left. Only a short time after, it had completely disappeared in the black of the deep sea. Once it had gone, Hansen fell onto the floor as collapsing from exhaustion. The clothes on his were soaked from his sweat. That was terrifying. How strong must that super creature have been? The way it looked and how it behaved was scary enough. Hansen's voice trembled as he spoke. The flame that the seahorse had spat out spooked Hansen. The thought of a creature possessing a flame that could incinerate a giant sacred blood creature into ash while submerged deep beneath the sea was a terrifying thing. Seeing that the direction in which the seahorse left was the way to the seabed shelter, Hansen endured another chill. Is the seabed shelter the one that resides above a royal spirit shelter? While Hansen was still feeling frightened, he saw a blue flame arise in the distance. What poor creature had fallen prey to the seahorse this time? Hansen gritted his teeth and commanded the mermaid princess to sail the crystal palace slowly in the direction the seahorse had gone. He did not dare go too quickly as he fixed his eyes on the blue flame in the distance. Hansen thought it wasn't fair and wanted to see if the seahorse was a creature from the seabed shelter. In order to learn more, he now sought to follow it. Before long, Hansen was disappointed. They reached an area not far from the seabed shelter, and he realized that the seahorse did indeed head towards it. The water around the crystal palace was now blue and as bright as the daytime. Hansen's face changed, as if he had just thought of something. He looked back in the direction of the seabed shelter and saw it engulfed in a blue flame. It was like a blue purgatory, where a strange blue light burned like mad. What's going on? That blue seahorse just incinerated the entire shelter. Hansen watched as the shelter was engulfed in blue flames. His mind froze in shock. The blue flames reached a dozen miles in length, and they writhed around the entirety of the seabed shelter. Stranger still was the fact that no spirit or creature seemed to have escaped from there. The area that surrounded the shelter was quiet. The only motion to be seen was that of the seabed shelter, now composed of blue flames like hell. So bright were the flames that the whole sea was now illuminated in blue. The fires blazed across the seabed for an hour, and when the sea's new color finally dimmed, the seabed shelter had become nothing more than a mound of ash. Had the blackened, charred dust not remained on the clear sand of the seabed, Hansen would not have believed that the place known as the seabed shelter had even existed. Seeing the shadow of the blue seahorse fade from sight, Hansen at last dared to sail the Crystal Palace closer to where the seabed shelter had once thrived. The seabed for the surrounding dozens of miles was now a charred landscape. Nothing remained. The lethal fire had erased all that once was. Hansen shivered, and his heart was struck with a genuine fear. He could not imagine how powerful that blue seahorse must be to reduce a shelter that was a dozen miles long into nothing more than dust and echoes. If the super creatures are all as frightening as that blue seahorse, although I have perfected 4 of my genes, I don't believe I could compete with them. Would I be able to withstand a lick of that blue flame? Hansen was concerned with the thought of the blue seahorse returning, so he ordered the mermaid princess to sail the Crystal Palace away. After leaving the area, Hansen's mind became a little calmer. When he was amidst the rubble and remains of the shelter, he saw which direction the seahorse had gone. It was towards the seabed trench, a frightful place that looked like a crack that could lead into hell. Hansen looked in that direction and felt terrified, shaking off the remote thought of giving chase to the creature. The water buffalo that Hansen slew was able to provide enough food for the next month. After seeing the blue seahorse, however, Hansen's interest in hunting in the deep sea waned significantly. How might I kill that blue seahorse? If I could obtain its beast soul, I can't imagine how terrifying it would be for others. Hansen's heart, when thinking this, was in equal parts excitement and fearful concern. While he was in the first shelter, it was incredibly difficult for Hansen to slay a super creature. It wouldn't be until he had a group of super soldiers by his side that he could kill one. The super creatures of the second shelter were even scarier. Hansen didn't know whether he could kill one, even if he managed to maximize his sacred geno points. If he couldn't, it would all be down to his usage of hyper-geno arts. Still, he couldn't risk rushing his learning of the Dongsu Sutra, and he had no idea when he would manage to open his first gene lock. Having now returned to the Alliance, Hansen planned to pay another visit to the virtual training camp in the army base so that he could further practice duel. His musings over whether he could slay a super creature were unrealistic at best, but his prior target of a twin spirit would be a fine foe to take on next. The mermaid princess was able to control the Crystal Palace, so it was possible that the twin spirit had similar advantages of its own. He could think about what he could do with it once he had obtained it. Perhaps it would come in handy further down the line, when he wanted to take on a super creature. After seeing the blue seahorse, Hansen now resolved to improve his power through any means necessary. Just as he entered the virtual training camp, he was invited to duel. It was from Qin Xuan's virtual training camp ID, Zhang Fei. Hansen accepted and entered the Zhang Fei's room. Coach, do you have the time to provide another lesson? Qin Xuan looked at Hansen with hopeful eyes. No lessons today, but I did learn a new sword skill recently. Perhaps you would like to train alongside me? Hansen asked casually. He did not know that his opponent would be Qin Xuan. He merely thought that Zhang Fei was a good fighter he hadn't met before. To train duel with her would be fine. Hansen's dual sword skill had been significantly modified. Although not yet perfect, it was a complete dual blade sword skill. Qin Xuan was using a dagger. She thought she was going to be attacked by a mad hurricane of swords, but it wasn't so. Although Hansen's attacks came in strongly, they weren't very powerful. This confused Qin Xuan. Why would an elite such as Hansen bother to learn a skill that wasn't all that potent? This was because Qin Xuan assumed Hansen's character was some mighty elite, and didn't know it was actually Hansen himself. She didn't doubt his decision, however, and only mulled over why he would select such a skill. Quickly, Qin Xuan noticed the problem and recognized the sword skill Hansen was using. She thought to herself, isn't that a sword skill traditionally cast by 2 people? He's actually using a sword skill designed for 2, isn't he? Is he modifying it for use by only 1 person? Qin Xuan had seen the skill in action before, and after recognizing it, felt quite surprised. A person had to be a strong elite to be able to modify an S-class skill that way. Who would spend that much time and effort to do it, as this person had? Besides, modifying a 2-person skill into a solo skill wasn't that pointless. If he had that time, why did he even bother learning a 2-person skill? To have the time and effort to commit to something like that, he must have been really bored or something. Qin Xuan did not dare to slow down and gave battle with Hansen all that she could. If not for her own self-improvement, then perhaps for his benefit. With the skills Qin Xuan possessed, she quickly noticed that there are many flaws and issues with Hansen's modified skill, so she put more focus onto her offense, to try to reveal those errors to him. Qin Xuan trained with Hansen for quite some time. She noticed that he kept changing the skill and improving its efficiency as he went on. The longer they battled, the more powerful King Shuan believed Hansen to be, no matter what flaw or weak point she discovered. After her first attack to draw attention to it, he quickly had it fixed and it would never appear again, demonstrating an efficiency she admired. King Shuan thought he must have only started modifying it and did not know he had actually been improving it for a long time. He had uncovered many issues in his previous testing of the skill, but had then lacked the opportunities to trial it further. With King Shuan's help in highlighting all the issues, the sword skill rapidly nearing completion. King Shuan had witnessed the two-person sword skill become a skill for wielding by one, and she was taken aback. The most surprising thing for her, however, was Hansen's ability to effectively control two things with one mind. Both of his hands were able to cast a sword skill, which made her feel as if she was actually doing battle with two people. No wonder he isn't going to St. Hall to learn the dual sword skill. There are no strange sword skills there. This modified dual skill really is amazing. King Shuan held great admiration for Hansen in her heart. Having learnt and watched Hansen modify the dual sword skill, she wanted to see if she could learn the skill for herself. Hansen left the virtual training camp in a good mood. After practicing with Zhang Fei, the dual sword skill had significantly improved. Hansen took a shower, all the while humming a song. When he was done, he lay down on the bed right as his communicator rang. Taking a look at who was calling, he saw it was King Shuan. King Shuan, it's very late for you to be calling. I can only assume you don't have a boyfriend, Hansen joked with her. King Shuan served the army, but the two frequently stayed in touch. Although they no longer traveled in the same circles, Hansen was still used to calling her team kid. I often go on blind dates, it's just that I have yet to meet someone suitable. King Shuan did not care too much for these things. Casually, she continued, I heard Young Manly has been talking about you. You've been doing a great job, and she was complimenting you a good deal. I almost thought it was a manly doppelganger. To have Team Kin compliment me makes my deeds worth the effort. Hansen laughed, but wanted to change the subject. King Shuan recognized this. She rolled her eyes and said nothing more about it. She blinked and then said, Did you go to the virtual training camp? Yeah, Hansen was going to tell her his virtual training camp ID, but King Shuan went on and said, Earlier, I met an elite in the virtual training camp, and I've learned a lot from him. What kind of elite? Hansen asked. I presume it was a great general in the army, or even a top surpasser. What was this elite's ID? It was a little soldier on the battleship. Have you seen him before? King Shuan asked. No, absolutely not. Hansen replied quickly. He was shocked, for he did not know that King Shuan was Xuan Fei. It's okay if you haven't. There's no need to look nervous about it. What's your ID in the training camp? King Shuan asked. I'm afraid I won't be able to visit the training camp for some time. Tell me your ID and I'll add you the next time I am there. Zhang Fei. Well, who is the emperor? Hansen knew that King Shuan was Zhang Fei, so he laughed. No one has yet shown they possess the right qualities to become my emperor. King Shuan pouted slightly as she said this. When I was in school, my ID was Black Fist Emperor. Do you want to team up with me, since I am an emperor? Sure, you come here. King Shuan smiled at Hansen. Hansen suddenly had an unpleasant feeling. He slanted his head and said, Actually, perhaps not. As emperor, even I may not be able to handle you. You talk such rot. If I tell Jai Yanren later, I'd like to see how you will be tortured. I'm going for a shower now. After that, King Shuan hung up. This is too much of a coincidence. Zhang Fei is Team Kim. Hansen licked his lips. He was wondering if she secretly knew that he was the great elite she kept referring to. If she didn't, what would she look like if he told her? Hansen was thinking of a way in which he could prank her the next time they met. That would be sweet justice for the last time prank she had played on him. Before Hansen could think of a way, the communicator rang once more. This time, it was Young Manly. After he answered, he saw Young Manly dressed only in her pajamas. Her snow-white shoulders were exposed, as were her lovely, snow-white legs. Hansen complimented her by saying, It is a little cold, but those legs are amazing. I could play with those beautiful legs for many years. Hansen then felt a little strange. Young Manly was a serious person on most occasions, and very rarely would you see her not wearing her military or battle outfits. Why would Young Manly change her clothes and suddenly start talking to him in her pajamas? Something is wrong. Young Manly's face did not look well, and her speaking was rushed. What happened? Hansen furrowed his eyebrows. If Young Manly was in such a hurry, then it must have something to do with the goddess shelter. Some people from outside have discovered our shelter. There are dozens of them. I think they are the people you spoke of out in the ice fields. Young Manly said. Do you know which shelter they come from? Hansen looked serious too. Someone asked them, and they said they were from the Black God shelter. Black God and his troops had at last arrived at the empty field of the mountain, the one that stretched out before the walls of the goddess' shelter. Over 200 of the Black God's elite were mounted atop snow wolves and were lined up in formation. The 6 evolvers Black God had brought with him spearheaded the formation. They too rode beasts, and the eyes of everyone on that field were now fixed upon the goddess' shelter ahead of them. Where did all these people come from? Is there another shelter nearby? Of course there is. Our goddess shelter does not possess that many elites. Look at the formation they are in. It seems as if they are going to attack our shelter. The commoners of the goddess shelter were in heated discussion about the events currently unfolding. Black God was riding a unicorn black wolf. Its eyes glistened with a striking iciness. The beast took 2 steps forward, and Black God unsheathed the black long sword. He raised it towards the sight of Hansen, who was standing on the tower above the gate of the city. He then said aloud, "I am the Black God army's leader, Black God. Hansen is both a shameless and obscene person. He sneak attacked me with a brutal poison, and I almost died. Today, I have come to put an end to the grudge I harbor against this horrible man. This is between me and him. If the rest of you lay down your arms, I will grant you your lives. Those who aid Hansen and try to stop me exacting my revenge will be mercilessly slain." After the speech, Black God rattled the longsword in his hand and cut in half a glacier that was in front of him. The strength of such a strike struck fear into the hearts of those in the goddess shelter. Kill! The 200 evolvers behind Black God screamed this word together. So loud was it. It was though the sky had been torn asunder by a savage clap of thunder. He is too strong. Black God is an elite with over 100 sacred genopoints, and the people behind him are powerful evolvers. With just the minuscule forces of the goddess shelter, how can we hope to beat them? He had it coming. People like Hansen should have died a long time ago. Yes, he did have it coming. Hansen doesn't know his place, and what he has done recently has been too much. He sneak attacked someone with poison. Now that those people are after him, he's a dead man walking. Their lust for his blood is total. Will he flee back to the Alliance? I can't see him getting out of this predicament in any other way. Boss, should we retreat? Uncle King furrowed his brow. The power on display from Black God was clearly far beyond what the goddess shelter could repel. No, you guys stay here, Hansen said calmly. He stared at Black God and his army of 200 evolvers. Hansen leapt from the gate's tower and landed on the field before the gate. Alone, he ventured towards Black God. Black God raised his hand and signaled for the army to stay put. He sternly watched Hansen approach and smiled. What is Hansen going over there for, all alone? Idiot. But oh well, what else can he do? It looks like he is surrendering already. The gulf in power cannot be bridged. He can't fight. See here, Hansen, who has been so cocky all this time, is finally getting what's coming to him. He deserves it. Perhaps most people did think that the gap in power between the two forces was too large, and that Hansen was going out there to surrender. Black God, how dare you show yourself to my shelter? Have you forgotten how brutally beaten you were, following our last duel? To lose is no shame, but only the truest of victors gets the last laugh, and that will be me. Black God sneered. I admit that you possess great individual power, but this is no longer a duel. If you surrender now, I will spare your life. If you refuse to concede, then take one last look at those in your command. They, as well as you, will be slain. I assume you are relying on the strength provided by these people behind you, those that are in your service. Hansen gave the evolvers that were lined up behind Black God another look. Yes, I have 6 evolvers that have over 100 sacred genopoints and 237 evolvers that have more 60 sacred genopoints. Destroying your shelter will be easy, Black God said with disdain. Murmurs of concern could be heard from the goddess shelter. At first, only Uncle King, Young Manly and Jutin could understand the strength and power that Black God commanded before their gates. But hearing what Black God had said, the rest of the populace was beginning to understand, too. To know that there were 6 evolvers with over 100 sacred genopoints and 237 evolvers with over 60 sacred genopoints were preparing to descend upon them made the people rightly fearful. In the goddess shelter, there were only about 10 people with a fitness level above 60. Hansen was the sole figure known to be over 100. But now, their opponents had 7 with over 100. The power gulf was too large to bridge. That means we have to fight today then, does it not? Hansen's face remained impassive as he waited for Black God to speak. Kneel to me. Plead before me for forgiveness over your sins and transgressions and then give me your shelter. Do this, and I will spare your life. Black God's mouth curled in a sneer as he looked at Hansen. He was not willing to settle for the death of Hansen today. He was determined to take ownership of the shelter. If he could force Hansen concede, then he would not have to expend resources in claiming another shelter. Hansen laughed and then said, "That's a shame." Coldly, Black God said, "And what is a shame, exactly? Soon, you will find out that what you rely on is puny and ridiculous. It's a shame you won't be given the opportunity to laugh anymore." As Hansen said this, his legs spurred up with the strength of triumphant stallion. He galloped towards Black God. "Is he crazy?" the people screamed in the goddess shelter. No one had expected Hansen to charge at the Black God army all by himself. There were 7 evolvers with over 100 sacred Geno points, and over 200 elite evolvers that had over 60 sacred Geno points. If Black God's army was a formation of hefty rocks, the goddess shelter was a basket of eggs. For Hansen to rush into the enemy looked like a futile suicide mission. "How dare you?" Black God shouted. He lifted his black longsword to signal his 6 supreme evolvers to step forward, attempt to block Hansen's coming, and to potentially surround him. From what Black God was seeing, he too now assumed Hansen to be a suicidal maniac. This was bizarre, because he personally knew how powerful he was. Crazy. This man is crazy. Wretched people meet a wretched fate. How unsurprising. We should open the gate while he is away and roll out the red carpet. Give Black God a proper welcome. You know, just in case they decide to kill us after they're done using Hansen as a chew toy. Yes, get that gate open. Let's welcome them in. A few commoners went out towards the gate and attempted to open it. "I'll kill whoever gets close to this gate. You hear me?" Young Manly stared down those who had ventured forward, while bellowing at them. The goddess army that was guarding the gate then turned around to raise their weapons at any would-be meddlers. Seeing them receive such a hostile reaction, the commoners became afraid and stopped their approach. Vice Leader Yang Hansen is rushing out and welcoming his demise with open arms. "There is no reason for you to die alongside him. We seek to open this gate for the benefit of everyone. Yes, Hansen may not want to live, but we do. He is like an egg playing conkers with a stone." "Oh, Vice Leader Yang, you are so pretty. Do not squander your beauty like this." Although they did not dare to march any closer to the gate, they were still willing to argue with Young Manly. "Instead of being this worried now, you should be more concerned about what will happen when we beat Black God," Young Manly stated coldly. The commoners all felt a chill run down their spine. Outside the gate, out on the battlefield, Hansen was racing into the enemy's army. His hands were empty, having not summoned a single weapon. He did not even wear armor, either. He might as well have been naked. The 6 evolvers instantly launched forwards to fight Hansen. They wielded beast soul weaponry and unleashed their evil powers as they leapt towards Hansen. But Hansen was incredibly fast, and even at the high speed he was going, he could take sharp turns without slowing down. He avoided 2 attacks that came towards him by quickly dodging left and right, then pushed on towards Black God. The 4 evolvers were alarmed at Hansen's advance and attempted to cut him down before he could come any closer. But Hansen possessed the agility of a bird, and to move as he did, while maintaining his furious speed, was almost like magic. Within a second, he had got past the 4 that had attempted to stop him. He was unbelievably fast, and he was unbelievably strong. Not one of the 6 evolvers had managed to stop Hansen, and now this solo assassin had nothing to stop him. Once he passed the 6 evolvers, Hansen advanced towards Black God. Impossible. Black God was shocked. It hadn't been that long since their last match together, but his powers had increased immeasurably. With a speed like this, heaven knows how much better he was now. Every step he took was in between someone's blind spot. He could swerve into places they could not reach, take advantage of a soul-misplaced footstep, and manipulate enemies to exhaust their powers. It was an incredible rush for Hansen to be able to do these things. It was as if he had entered God mode. With his great ability to perceive unfolding events, it was as if he was watching battles from high above. If he was once a chess piece, he had now become the player himself. Everything had fallen under his control. "Kill him," Black God shouted. As he did, Black God fell back. He had no idea why. But as he looked into the eyes of his fierce, lone attacker, a chill fell upon him. He started falling back even further. He did not dare to engage Hansen in direct, one-to-one combat. The 237 evolvers were heavily armed, and they worked together to surround Hansen. Young Manly was waiting alongside her team, watching the field with shredded nerves. With the killing abilities they appeared to possess, victory over them was something not even a collection of hardened elites could pull off. Her anxiety over the well-being of Hansen became even greater. And Hansen was not wearing any armor. His entire body was exposed and weak, so to believe he could survive a battlefield in such conditions was an extremely dangerous endeavor. He was only wearing a traditional combat outfit that was standard issue for the Alliance. But now suddenly Hansen changed, as a red armor suddenly appeared to clothe his entire body. His short hair grew into a stream of long, blonde locks. His eyes sparkled with the color of gold and a ruby crown was lifted upon his head to decorate his new appearance. After his sudden transformation into a fairy queen, the whole world seemed to slow down in Hansen's vision. The spears that had been coming towards him like arrows had slowed to a crawl. He danced like a butterfly, or more menacingly like a wild bat in the dark. His body moved incredibly quickly, managing to weave its way between the swordsmen and their spears. He formed a gap between the ranks of the assaulting formation, and after breaching through, ran towards Black God. Every evolver Hansen passed by possessed a confusion in their heart. The position Hansen chose to breach was strange to them. It looked as if he were going to go in another direction. But when they turned to look, he was back where he had started. Whenever they wanted to strike, Hansen was already gone. With these godlike powers possessing his body, he was unstoppable. The evolvers on the battlefield felt hopeless and frustrated. Black God's face looked like mud. He could not believe that his formation, composed of over 200 evolvers, was unable to prevent Hansen's advance. And he was frightened. Hansen's power had reached such a degree that calling him strong was no longer fitting. He was almost inhuman. Kill him, Black God screamed as he continued to retreat. His heart felt as if it had been stabbed with ice. Hansen's performance had been too frightening to watch, and still, Black God lacked the courage to battle his most despised enemy. The 6 evolvers from the front rushed back and caught up with Hansen, who was now just beyond the formation and going for Black God. Their spears were like wretched dragons and their swords were like soaring eagles. Hansen leaped into the sky and danced across the swords and spears of his enemies, before jumping towards Black God. The ability to obtain power from the air and enable a person to leap again was extraordinary. People didn't believe their eyes. Treading Cloud from the Chan family, although not as effective as 7 twists which borrowed strength from the air itself 7 times, was enough for Hansen to reach Black God. Black God was a hard, tough person. Seeing Hansen fly towards him, he knew that it was now too late for him to turn back. Die! Black God screamed. His black longsword disappeared at the speed of light and reappeared directly in front of Hansen's face. He cast Tornado Knife twice as quickly. Seeing his black sword appear so close to Hansen's beautiful Apollo-like face, Black God suddenly felt a numbness in his arm. The arm that held the sword could no longer be controlled, and he watched as it flew upwards. The sword nicked Hansen's face and drew a shallow rivulet of blood. A few strands of golden hair were also cut and were carried off in the wind. Hansen used his fist to block Black God's tornado knife, though none could see how, due to the speed at which events were happening. Almost at the same time, Hansen's other hand performed a totally different action. His hand took the shape of a blade and shone like a bolt of lightning. Without warning, it swept forward like the attack of a ghostly assassin. Black God wanted to pull back his arm and attack again, but he noticed his vision begin to fade. Hansen's face looked further away, and he felt as if he was flying, joining Hansen in the air. To Black God this all felt bizarre. In his vision, he now saw a familiar body, plated in black armor. The body was sitting upon a black wolf, but it lacked a head. From the stump of the body's neck, a fountain of blood spurted out. The battlefield went quiet. Everyone's eyes were now fixed on the airborne head, and they all looked astounded, unable to fathom what they were seeing. The master of the Black God shelter, the strongest man on the ice fields, the warrior who possessed the disappearing demon knife. His head had been cut off by a hand stemming from the middle of his army's formation. Everyone was rattled, distraught, as if they had all been frozen. All they could do was stare at the blond man who looked like a god. Young Manly's face was red with excitement, and her beautiful eyes sparkled. Her heart was pumping like mad. Even she could hardly believe Hansen had been able to kill Black God in such a fashion, in such a desperate situation. The formation that had faced him had been almost nothing to him. He had just waved his hand and ripped the head off, quick and clean, smooth as butter. Such unbelievable power. No wonder he is an heir of Coach Han. Uncle King looked bewildered as he spoke. The people wanting to open the gate were flabbergasted. They could not believe Hansen had able to run up to such a mighty elite, surrounded by his great army, and slay him like so. Within 2 to 3 minutes, it was all over. Those few people felt a chill assault their necks, and they couldn't help but run their fingers around it. They felt that when Hansen came back and found out how they had behaved, they'd all be headless within a few seconds. Many people started running towards the teleporter, consumed by fear. Hansen had managed to hack someone's head off as if it were a game, in the midst of a huge battle. The Mourners lacked the protection of the army, and neither were they elite evolvers that might have been able to fend for themselves. Their legs were turning to jelly as they made off to the teleporters. The 6 Supreme Evolvers remained frozen. They had witnessed many strong people in their time, but this was unlike anything they had ever seen before. One single man, targeting the head of his opposition like a rocket, had managed to dance and weave through an army to get to his objective. Their hearts were chilled, and they abandoned all thoughts of fighting. Hansen, we only took orders from Black God. One evolver spoke out amidst the silence. We followed his command, that was it. We have no personal desire for conflict with you. Right now, Black God is dead and there would be nothing to gain from further combat. Can we end it all now and call for a truce? Whoever attacks my shelter is an enemy. My enemies are not for you to determine, Hansen coldly said. If we fight for our lives, you might not have the advantage, another elite said. Still, his voice trembled with the obvious desire to flee and not be forced to engage with Hansen. Since you're here, then you must have your answer. If you fight, we fight until the last man is standing. If not, then you will join my goddess army. You will follow me as I lead an assault to destroy the Black God shelter. This will make you a soldier of the goddess army. Hansen looked at them gleefully. The evolvers sounded as if they were hesitating. They were already frightened, and seeing the godly-looking Hansen, the last thing they wanted was to fight him. Although there were 200 evolvers with them, they still didn't feel safe. But to surrender to him and take down the Black God shelter, they were afraid whether their main leader back in the Alliance would let them go so easily. I know the person called Dom Lin. After you return, you can register with me. Hansen already knew much of the Black God's dealings and affairs from Tang Zhenliu, so knew enough to make this suggestion. Hearing this, they no longer hesitated. True or false, Hansen had already given them a reason not to fight. Stricken with fear, the last thing they wanted to do was battle. We are willing to join the goddess shelter and follow your lead. Numerous evolvers spoke in unison. The people in the goddess shelter were amazed, as all of this was happening so quickly. They had been lusting for their blood a few minutes prior, and yet here they were now, yielding to the command of Hansen. In their eyes, the power of the Black God army was still strong. It was not as if they could fight back, so why would they so readily concede? The Black God's shelter had had a change in ownership in the span of a single night. This was news that startled many. The Black God shelter also changed its name, becoming the Goddess Shelter. The same also applied to the smaller branches of the Black God shelter, so that they too adopted the new name of Goddess Shelter. No one was entirely sure what happened, and why everything had suddenly changed. Did you know that Hansen is 8 feet tall, and his waist is 8 feet wide, too? He has the strength of a monster. Black God brought 3,000 elite evolvers with him, and they battled together for 3 days and 3 nights. And guess what? Hansen didn't even get a scratch. Are you sure? I heard it was an army of 30,000 that set out to attack Hansen, and he effortlessly killed 10,000 people, which turned the rivers red with blood. The corpses, when stacked together, formed an entirely new mountain, and that was after filling a canyon. When it was all over, everyone in the Black God army was killed, which led to the Black God shelter surrendering. What are you guys talking about? Hansen is an extremely beautiful woman. I don't believe it. How can Hansen be a woman? That's a man's name. Well, you're missing something. Either way. You see, there was a really touching story in the midst of everything. And it was all about me. Hansen and I used to be neighbors, and not many people know about this, but back in the day, the legends that surrounded Hansen, out on the ice fields, quickly spiraled into madness. But despite the constant additions to the tales that were told, one thing remained constant. Hansen had been able to bring down the Black God shelter in one night. The real warriors, like Li Xinglan and Brother Philip, upon hearing the news, found it difficult to believe what had happened. It was more shocking for them to hear that than if Hansen had managed to slay 30,000 evolvers with a single slap. Killing people was easy, but taking over territory was incredibly difficult. And to hear that Hansen had managed to take over all the territory Black God previously owned was quite frightening. The reason why Hansen had been able to effortlessly take ownership of the Black God shelter was the aid given to him by Tang Zhenliu. Tang Zhenliu used to say that if Hansen managed to kill Black God, then he would be able to easily take over his power. Hansen had simply decided to try it. He had then asked Tang Zhenliu for assistance. If Tang Zhenliu was able to do it, then Hansen would have no issue with claiming ownership of the Black God shelter. If Tang Zhenliu could not do it, then he would at the very least resort to ransacking and taking what he could from the place. Without enough people to take over a shelter, it would be a demanding task, but looting the place could be fruitful. In the end, Tang Zhenliu really did manage to take care of the people who had previously supported Black God. Wai Xinglun and brother Philip were relieved that Hansen was not interested in becoming a self-imposed king of the ice fields. Taking over the Black God shelter had presented him with many benefits, however. Not only would he receive income from the Black God shelter, he would even obtain the swaths of information and intelligence that the Black God shelter held in its possession. There were many sacred blood-class creatures residing across the ice fields. Although the Black God shelter could not eliminate them, their record-keeping housed a great deal of useful information on them. He wanted to find out more about this so-called Jade Sun Force. The search engine quickly presented numerous articles. It looked as if it was a fairly popular hyper-geno art. Hansen picked a site at random. Do you want to stay long and hard? Do you want your partner or wife to moan and scream all night? Do you have problems staying hard or finishing too soon? If you said yes to any of these, then the Jade Sun Force is here for you. It will train you to become a man with a golden sword. You will soon be slaying your wife in bed, breaking her voice as she screams your name. What are you waiting for? Come order it today. Learn this and become a real man. What? Hansen almost spat out the tea he was drinking. What the hell is this? He clicked on another link, but that too offered to sell the same hyper-geno art, one that was related to the suffering of an unhealthy kidney. Hansen quickly realized that this was indeed a famous hyper-geno art. There were many different types of Jade Sun Force on the Skynet, each having been slightly modified to suit the various needs of different people. It was not unlike the skill panorama. They were all mostly the same, though. The Jade Sun Force was a hyper-geno art that seemed to be designed for the strengthening of a person's kidney. But its versatility lent itself well to the aiding and correction of many different sicknesses and debilitations which could afflict men. What is wrong with this Ting? Do I look like I need this skill? I could do it with 10 women in one night. Hansen felt as if his very dignity had been slighted. Even his disposition had taken a nasty blow. It was no wonder Ting had told him to check the hyper-geno art out on his own. Besides, this cheap crap is all over Skynet. There is no need for me to buy it, I can just find it. The communicator rang. He accepted the call, and a beautiful image presented itself. It was Huang Fu Ping King. Sister, your beauty only increases as the days go by. Hansen saw Huang Fu Ping King look both mature and attractive, and he couldn't help himself from complimenting her appearance as soon as he laid eyes on her. There was no harm in offering compliments. Besides, she used to be of great aid to him. Huang Fu Ping King looked happy, and her face bore the most incredible smile. But then she froze, looked past Hansen vacantly and sighed. Did my face grow flowers? Hansen touched his face, wondering why she looked at him in the way she did. Little brother must be tired these days. After a moment, she said, although you are young, you should attend to your rest. Your body's health receives no reward from overexerting itself. She called him, spoke some inane blabber and then hung up. What could she have wanted? Thinking of that, Hansen turned around to look at his monitor. He froze. Do you want to stay hard and long? Do you? The advert was still fully displayed, and he quickly understood what had happened. He understood why Huang Fu Ping King had acted strangely, and hung up hurriedly. No. Hansen felt like he was in trouble, and frantically called up Huang Fu Ping King. This was really bad. If she told people that Hansen was unable to perform effectively, he couldn't imagine the embarrassment. How would the girls he knew view him then? A chill ran down his spine just thinking about it. Shortly after, the communicator was connected. Sister, listen to me. Let me explain. Hansen then tried to tell her why that advert had been on his screen. But he had only spoken 2 sentences before Huang Fu Ping King responded by saying, there is no need for you to explain your issue to me. I am not who you are. The woman from the Jai family is pretty, and you can do to her whatever you see fit. That has nothing to do with me. She didn't give Hansen the chance to explain, and hung up before he could start talking again. But then the communicator rang with someone else on the line. Hansen was getting frustrated, and wanted to call her back so he could explain. He was going to push the call button, but his finger slipped to press receive. Jai Yanren's image appeared, and gave Hansen a fright. As Jai Yanren looked at Hansen, she had a sweet smile. But that soon disappeared, as well. Hansen wanted to slap himself for having forgotten to close the advert again. He tried to explain, calm down, Yanren. It isn't what you think. I've found some time today so that I may do it with you. But it's okay. It would be best if you go and train. I'll gladly wait for you to improve. Jai Yanran looked supportive. Hansen felt himself going mad. Just when he wanted to explain, he heard someone else calling her. Jai Yanran then said to Hansen, I'm going for a meeting. You should practice in the meantime. I won't disturb you, but make sure to get some rest. No, it's not like that. I can do it, I really can. Hansen wanted to explain, but she had already hung up. Ju Ting, I'm not done with you. Yelling continued to erupt from inside the room. Because Jai Yanran had to have a meeting, she turned off her communicator. In a frenzy, Hansen ran to the teleporter and returned to the shelter. Ju Ting, you son of a troll. Come out here. Boss, what is it? Ju Ting left his room and couldn't help but notice Hansen's soured expression. Ju Ting turned and attempted to leave in a hurry, but Hansen made sure to block his escape. Ju Ting, you and your dreadful Jade Sun Force. Does it look like I need that sort of thing? My kidney is stronger than that of a titan. When I get hard, I sometimes scare myself. Hansen scowled at Ju Ting with dagger eyes and gritted his teeth. Ju Ting felt a chill run down his spine. With a forced smile, he said, Boss, please don't get mad. This isn't what you think. Then what is it? Hansen looked at Ju Ting with murder in his eyes. Ju Ting was genuinely afraid that Hansen was going to beat him, so he raised his hands against Hansen's chest while trying to explain as quickly as he could. This Jade Sun Force does improve a man's manliness, but that isn't the only thing that it does. Although using the Jade Sun Force could allow a man to do it 10 times without getting tired, a man such as you can already do that, surely. The benefit you can seek from the Jade Sun Force would not concern this. Of course, I can do that. Hansen's face was starting to appear a little calmer. The Jade Sun Force's primary function is to strengthen a person's kidney. The kidney is a core organ of the human body, so its strengthening would yield benefits to your stamina, vitality, and power. What I presented to you was the real thing, taken from the Jade Sun tablet. It's not some crappy product you can order from a sleazy Skynet site. If you learn this hyper-geno art, you wouldn't even get winded after traveling 1,000 miles in a single day, Ju Ting explained. You sure make it sound revolutionary. I wager it's not any different to those rubbishy mail-order products on Skynet, Hansen said. It's not the same, I assure you, Ju Ting said. When the Jade Sun tablet was unearthed, a great many people desired it. After much quarreling, it was broken. The tablet, as it once existed, can no longer be seen. However, a few copies of the original tablet do remain. I possess one such copy. I copied this one myself. The real stuff is too precious. I was just worried that you'd destroy the parchments in a rage if I hadn't been able to talk about this properly and explain it. I brought you a fake version, but if you really want it, I can provide you the genuine copy, Ju Ting said quickly. Give me the real thing. But if I find out you have lying to me this entire time, do not blame me for being cruel to you. Hansen stared at Ju Ting with fierce eyes. Hansen studied the new one that Ju Ting had brought out. Its mere presence felt different to look upon, but he couldn't quite tell in what way. He then took the 3 fake copies in one hand and the real one in the other. He read them all side by side. The words were the same, and so was their color. But seeing the genuine thing, there really was a feeling you couldn't quite put your finger on. Any real hypergeno arts always permeated its nearby atmosphere with a mystic hue, after all. See, boss, I told you I wasn't lying, Ju Ting smiled. There are some slight, noticeable differences. Hansen stared at the real copy multiple times, trying to identify the strange feeling it was giving him. 3 Berserk mutant beast souls and 2 ordinary mutant beast souls. That is all I will offer you for this thing. Take it or leave it, the choice is yours. Boss, please give me more. This is a one-of-a-kind artifact. Ju Ting clenched his teeth as he agreed to Sen's offer. Hansen glanced over the documents he was about to receive in exchange, to ensure there were no problems or tricks to hand. He then sealed the deal. Hansen turned and walked on a few steps, but he then turned around and asked Ju Ting, once I have learnt this, can I truly take on 10 people at the same time? Boss, we tried hunting the Silver-Eye Snake King once before with Black God. We didn't succeed, as it was far too difficult. In the domain of that wretched creature, the efficiency of our powers was dampened and subdued. To be surrounded by snakes is no small task. It is wickedly dangerous. A few of the elites that had accompanied Black God in the hunt had their faces contort with fear, as they heard Hansen's plan to venture there and slay the beast. They attempted to change his mind. I have already made my decision. Stop the chatter and follow my commands, Hansen responded coldly. At this, some of the elites lost hope. Dom Lin and Hansen had already come to an agreement, so for this task, those who had been selected had no choice but to accompany him. Hansen brought 10 people with him to Ice Snake Valley. They all reached their destination in fine health. On the snow fields they now treaded, movement from beneath the snow could be seen. It was movement from a silver-white ice snake, tunneling forward like a rabid earthworm. The ice snakes were white, with eyes of deadly silver. When they were submerged in the piles of snow, they were camouflaged and nearly impossible to see. A well-armed person might be able to withstand the bite of an ordinary ice snake, but if they were to be bitten by a mutant variant, it wouldn't matter if their fitness level was over 100. Succumbing to such a bite would freeze you in no time at all. Those 10 evolvers were over 100, but their great talents did little to stave off their fear. They did their best to delay and drag out the venture there, taking their time as if their life depended on it. Because it did. Hansen noticed this, but wasn't upset. Instead, he smiled and said, "Well, how about this? You don't have to risk your lives and enter the valley. I will go alone to draw out the Silver Eye Ice Snake King. I will lure it all the way here, so that we can fight it together, free from the intrusions of the other snakes. But there is something I must tell you first. If I draw out the Silver Eye Ice Snake King, and someone decides to flee, do not blame me for being cruel in my response to your desertion. Even Don Lin will be unable to help out any cowards that run." Hansen eyed each of them coldly. In response, one of the evolvers said, "Do not worry, boss. We aren't like that. We will do our best to help you slay it." Though his mouth said that, his heart felt something else. Like the rest, he believed that if Hansen truly ventured there alone, he wouldn't be coming back. They initially believed that Hansen might have wings and was planning to fly into the valley to draw the Snake King out. It was nearly impossible for someone to walk down there. The depth of the snow was greater than any man, and if you were to sink into it when trying to walk on top of it, you'd be sinking into a white grave occupied by unwelcoming snakes. It would be certain death. If Hansen could fly, he would fare better, but not by much. The ice snakes also possessed the ability to fly, and so an unbalanced dogfight would quickly ensue. Although they couldn't fly too high, for as long as he would be in the ice valley, it would be impossible for him to escape their pursuit. That's why they thought Hansen's decision to go in, alone, was a suicidal move. But there he went, walking into the valley. Without wings, Hansen had learnt the talent Ice Skin, however, and so was unafraid of being frostbitten. That's not to say he planned on getting bitten by the snakes, though. As he stepped into the ice valley, Hansen leapt into a sprint. As he ran, his footsteps were so slight that they only left a shallow indent in the snow, and you could only trace them by paying close attention. Although Hansen's body was really light, it still drew the attention of the ice snakes. He noticed 2 ice snakes leaping out from their white, powdery crypts to attack him. The silver-scaled creatures glistened in blinding white beneath the sun of that day. They stretched their bodies and spread their wings like giant cicadas. They dive-bombed towards Hansen but missed, and so twirled in the air to try again. Hansen had read the profiles of the snakes before, and knew that the ice snakes had wings. Although they could not fly high, they had incredibly strong gliding abilities. Because of this, he knew he could not risk slowing down, so he pushed forward, dodging the snakes that lashed towards him. He didn't kill the 2 ice snakes because he only wanted to draw the ire of the Snake King and lead it out. If he killed the 2 ice snakes, the scent of their blood would rally every other snake in the valley, and if that happened, he would be in big trouble. He ignored the 2 chasing snakes and continued to push onward. A few other snakes occasionally joined the fray, but they did not pose much of a threat to Hansen. As he glided along the snow, he continued to dodge every attack as he pushed into the canyon. The snowy mountain was 100 miles long, and all Hansen knew was that the Snake King was in some sort of icy cave in the middle of the valley. Weird. Shouldn't the ice cave be around the 30-mile mark? I've already been running for 40 miles. Why haven't I seen it yet? Hansen was puzzled. By now, 1,000 ice snakes were chasing him. He was lucky that he was skilled enough to outpace and dodge every snake that attacked him. But as time went on, he reached a narrow gulf where steep icy slopes tunneled him forward. Yet he still couldn't see an ice cave. The group of ice snakes that had been giving him chase was now significantly smaller. As he traveled further, more and more snakes abandoned the chase, until a few miles later, they were all gone. A chill took Hansen's heart, and he said, "Is this the Snake King's territory? Do they not dare venture near it?" But that didn't feel right, either. If he had truly arrived where the Snake King was, the ice snakes should have been protecting their king. They shouldn't have been running away. Hansen thought there was something wrong with the ice valley. Something must have happened that had changed it. He looked around, but was unable to see what was outside the ice valley. Because of the snow around him, he couldn't detect the presence of further ice snakes. What's more, a deafening silence now permeated the atmosphere of the valley. The sun was choked by clouds, and more snow began to fall. I've already come this far, I can't turn back now. Hansen didn't want to give up just yet, so he gritted his teeth and pushed on. He had a berserk sacred blood wing, so he could always fly away. The ice snakes, if they decided to resume their chase, wouldn't be able to catch him that way. As such, there was nothing to be afraid of. Hansen walked another 20 miles without finding a single snake. After his arduous trek, he reached an ice wall in front of him. It was smooth, but to his right and left, an array of lethal glaciers boxed him in. He had now reached the end of the canyon. Suddenly, Hansen was able to make out the presence of an ice cave in the wall of ice in front of him. It wasn't what he expected, however, as it was 3 meters tall and only 1 meter wide. It looked strange, being so tall and so thin. He didn't see anything from the entrance, so he summoned his golden armor and glyph. After doing so, he ventured inside. The ice cave wasn't too deep. After walking a few miles, he had reached the end. Once he got there, the narrow cave opened into a wide cavern. Hansen hadn't faced any danger or come across a single creature on his way there. In the icy hall, Hansen noticed the presence of an egg that was about half the height of a fully grown human. Its silver hue made it look metallic, and its glossy exterior was adorned with a variety of finely engraved patterns. Hansen felt happy at making this discovery. He ran towards the egg and said, "Haha, the gods must love me. I can't believe I have found such an egg. It must belong to the Snake King." Hansen knew that it was difficult for creatures to bear children. Golden roars exhausted all they could to produce offspring, and they imparted their young with their geno-essence. Doing so always led to the willing deaths of their mothers. But the cavern and ice cave were entirely clear, and there was no sign of the Snake King. To Hansen, this was a golden opportunity, and he did not hesitate to reach out his hand to touch the metallic, silver egg. Hansen's fingertips recoiled at receiving an electric shock. The hair on his fingers now stood on end. The charge that had shot into his body made him take 2 steps back, and he almost fell over. My God, what is this egg? Why is it electric? Hansen's eyes were wide open, staring at the egg in puzzled confusion. He then saw how the eggshell's patterns were highlighted, but from its previously bright appearance, was now turning dim. Hansen eyed the egg with suspicion. He had eaten numerous eggs in the past, but never seen an egg quite like this. While he was thinking, a noise came from outside. Hansen was startled, thinking that the Snake King had returned. He pricked up his ears to listen, but all he could hear were the sounds of human footsteps. Hansen frowned, looking out towards the cave entrance. The guys he had brought with him had not dared come this way, so whoever it was, they weren't associated with Hansen or his Snake King excursion that day. Taking a look, Hansen saw a person with blue armor, black hair, and white wings enter the cave. As he had suspected, it wasn't one of the evolvers that he had left behind. But, to his comfort, it was someone he knew. Dongmu. Hansen watched him curiously, and then called out his name. He had never expected to see him here, but judging from his apparel, he had just flown in. It was fortunate that this place had no ice snakes, for flying in like that would have given him a rude welcome. Although you were here first, according to the rules, whoever claims it first owns it. Dongmu saw where the silver egg was and, in a flash, used all his energy to dash towards it. No, don't. Hansen reached out and attempted to grab Dongmu. Seeing Hansen, Dongmu used his strength to go even faster. When he reached his prize, he hugged the egg with open arms. Egg. Dongmu cried out as letting out a final death cry. Brutally electrified, all his hair spiked upwards. He fell to the floor hard, his hands outstretched as if he was still hugging the egg. He seemed to have been paralyzed by the electric shock. Hansen smiled as he walked to catch up with Dongmu. He shook his head and said, "I didn't want to stop you from getting the egg. I was just trying to grab you and prevent this from happening. I was trying to be nice." Dongmu stared at Hansen disapprovingly, not believing him. Hansen watched Dongmu struggle to sit up and wanted to laugh. Earlier, he had in fact misled Dongmu, because he wanted to find out if there still was electricity coming out of the egg after he had touched it. Hansen received his answer, but it was now evident that this egg was no ordinary egg. It clearly was a powerful one. Poor Dongmu was taking a long time to recover from the shock, but he could hardly blame Hansen. It was his own fault for rushing towards it, after all. I had never heard of the Silver Eye Snake King possessing electric skills. I thought it could only inflict frostbite. How can this egg have such strong electricity? Hansen walked around the egg a few times, observing it. The pattern on the egg seemed to have been highlighted again after it shocked Dongmu, but the light was once again beginning to fade. Mr. E, I believe we are going to have to crack this egg open. Otherwise, we will be unable to eat it. I am weak compared to you, so maybe you should go ahead and do it. Hansen turned to look at Idongmu again, watching as he struggled to move his limbs. Idongmu gave Hansen a disdainful look, as if to say, "Do you think I am a fool?" Hansen did not dare to try to smash the egg, as the electricity given by a small touch was painful enough. If he went to smash it, and the electricity inside was unleashed, what if it turned him into charcoal? Seeing Idongmu still unable to move, he didn't dare go first. He started to think how he might get it open. If he returned to the Alliance, he could get himself a strong pair of insulated gloves. But he was a long way from there, and the electricity in the egg seemed unstable. Perhaps the gloves wouldn't provide much help anyway, and since he didn't own a pair himself, he would have to go to the hassle of buying one. But who would have guessed there would be an egg emitting such crazy amounts of electricity in such a place? Hansen hadn't prepared for this scenario, so his options were limited. If he did decide to return, Hansen didn't want to leave the egg behind, either. "Mr. Yi, if we have come all this way, there's no way we can return empty-handed. Are you sure you wouldn't mind trying again?" Hansen wanted to convince Idongmu to give the egg another try. "Nope, but I'll watch you give it a go." Idongmu didn't move, and continued to sit there. His face was pale, suggesting the electricity had injured him significantly. "If you aren't willing to give it a shot, then of course I won't. But if neither of us are willing to touch it, then being here is a waste of time." While both of them were talking, a cracking noise could be heard coming from the egg. They both jumped and looked at it. They saw the half-human tall egg had a few cracks on it. Somehow, it was beginning to open by itself. Hansen and Idongmu both jumped up and anxiously watched the egg open. If the egg was cracking because they had touched it earlier, then it was okay. But if this was a natural occurrence, then they would be in trouble. Another cracking noise sounded, and a splintered ravine of cracks now ran the length of the egg. Hansen and Idongmu took a few steps back, watching the silver and metal egg with high alert. It was only an egg, but it discharged great torrents of electricity. It certainly wasn't normal. If a creature did reside inside the egg, even as a newborn, they suspected it might possess terrible, powerful abilities. Crack, crack. More and more cracks began to run down the sides of the egg, until a plate of the shell was smacked open. Inside, the fluffy silver head was trying to poke its way out of its shell. The eyes of the creature were only half open. The creature was attempting to claw its way out of the eggshell. "It's not a snake." Hansen and Idongmu both froze, having believed it was going to be a baby of the silver eye snake king. This was not what they had expected. The creature that was trying to pry its way out was coated in a silver fur, and it had long, sharp ears. It was a little fox, and its eyes burned with the passion of a phoenix. The small animal finally managed to break free and leave the egg. Although it was freshly hatched, it was about the same size as an adult tanuki. Its fur was lush and full, and a majestic tail swept the shell behind it. It looked as if it had been built to thrive in the harsh, icy environment it had been born in. Flop. After exiting the eggshell, the creature was unable to stand steady. Idongmu then seemed to move, dagger in hand. Like a gust of wind, he started rushing towards the weakened animal that was still spread out on the ground in pain. He targeted one of its half-open eyes and attempted to kill it. But Hansen took a few steps back. Instead, this scene was all too familiar for him. When the Golden Roar was born, he had played the role Idongmu was now fulfilling. Idongmu was a talented assassin, and although his attacks were unpredictable, they were lethal. The tip of his dagger had been driven directly into the silver fox's eyelid, but the knife was stopped in its place, its bloodlust greeted by the sound of hammered steel. The eyelid was made of metal. "Pow!" the silver fox cried out, but Idongmu was undeterred, and he tried to push the blade in with greater strength. But before he could do anything more, a lightning bolt arced to the dagger in his hands, and from the metal of his weapon, an incredible current of electricity surged through his body. The silver fox fell onto the floor again, while Idongmu was flung away. So strong was the current that even his armor had been blackened. The white wings that he wore were now charred, with their plumage reduced to a few sparse, smoldering feathers. This time the damage was even greater. When Idongmu hit the ground, he lay crumpled, unable to move, and had Hansen not been able to detect his heartbeat, he would have thought him dead. Holy smokes, this thing is the child of a super creature. Hansen felt a chill run down his spine, as he confirmed that this creature was indeed not of the sacred blood variety. Idongmu possessed great power, and with the force he had thrust into his dagger strike, there should have been no way the creature could remain damaged. It was just a newborn sacred blood creature. When Hansen fought against the Golden Roar, the same thing had happened. But the first shelter's super creatures only dealt brute, raw damage. They lacked the skills and intricacies of other super creatures Hansen had later come to know. And when he did go against the Golden Roar, he hadn't been as badly hurt as Idongmu was now. The previously docile silver fox was now angry. It pulled itself onto its paws and quickly followed his aggressor, running to where Yidongmu now lay crumpled on the ground. It seemed like the silver fox wanted to reverse what had just happened. Hansen ran over to the severely injured Yidongmu and attempted to pull him away. Yidongmu was one of his biggest clients, and one who never haggled for a bargain. If he was to die here in such a matter, that would be a bad break for his business. Hansen pulled Yidongmu to the trail that led outside. The silver fox attempted to pursue its intruders, but it had only just been born, and was still weak and unable to fully control its body. So when it went after them, it could barely walk straight, let alone maintain the pace it would have needed to keep up with them. Hansen did not dare do anything aggressive towards the silver fox. He only dragged Yidongmu to the exit. He dreaded the thought of making himself the enemy of a super creature's baby. Upon exiting the ice cave, he dragged Yidongmu for a distance of 10 miles. Looking around to determine whether he was being followed, he thought it a good time to observe the severity of Yidongmu's wounds. It was very bad. In several areas, his skin had frayed and torn open in response to the power of the electric shock. In many places, his skin had turned black and green. It was fortunate he was wearing armor, for if he hadn't, he would have died the second he was shocked. Although he wasn't dead, he was critically injured. I am such a nice guy, saving you from certain death. I'll keep you to this, so that you can repay the debt sometime in the future. Hansen applied some medicine to the wounds of the incapacitated Yidongmu. As he tended to his injuries, he said, "It's a shame that I'm being forced to use my pricier salves on you, as well. When you wake up, I won't hesitate to give you the bill." Yidongmu came to screaming, flinching from the pain. Although later effective, application of the medicine Hansen was using stung terribly. "Stop screaming. Aren't you a man of some bravery? If you can't suffer this, how can you expect to be a person of great deeds in the future?" Hansen's bedside manner left a little to be desired. "You didn't even give me some anesthetic before you poured that hellfire on my wounds. Why don't you give it a go, eh? We'll see whether you scream, asshole." Yidongmu's face was pale with the pain, and his lips trembled. Yidongmu screamed again. He grabbed Hansen's leg and bit down on it. When Hansen was in the ice cave, he had put his armor away when he heard Yidongmu first enter. He felt a savage pain from every tooth that now dug into his calf, and he couldn't help but accompany Yidongmu in writhing in agony. "Let go of me. Are you a goddamn shark? You just bite and don't let go." Hansen pushed his biter's head, but the pain Yidongmu was suffering from was too much, and every aspect of him rattled. Afraid he might end up biting his own tongue off, he tried biting into the nearest item he could, which just happened to be Hansen's leg. Hansen continued crying in pain, so he slapped Yidongmu's head numerous times. When Yidongmu finally let go, he rolled over on the icy ground. It was as if his entire body had been drained of energy, and he was left gasping and wheezing on the floor for recovery. When Hansen looked at his leg, he saw blood seep from 2 teeth marks. Just as he was about to shout at the man beside him, he witnessed the silver shadow heading his way. It was the silver fox. Hansen's face changed. The silver fox had only just been born, but it was already so quick. What's more, it was accelerating as it got nearer. Before long, it stood just 5 meters from them. For a brief moment, Hansen thought about summoning his wings to escape, but the silver fox didn't do anything. It just stood there watching Hansen with its phoenix-like eyes. Hansen's heart was chilled, and he took a few steps back, removing himself from Yidongmu's proximity. He thought to himself, "What are you looking at me for? The person who attacked you is right there." But the silver fox didn't look at Yidongmu at all. Its eyes just traced Hansen's every move, which scared him. As Hansen moved to the left, his steps were accompanied by the silver fox's gaze. Hansen's heart was thumping, and he said, "Oh no, are this creature's eyes so weak that it can't recognize who harmed it?" Yidongmu was still on the floor, but then all of a sudden, he quickly summoned another pair of purple wings and flew off into the sky. "Thanks so much, I'll make sure to pay you back later," Yidongmu said as he flew away. Hansen was angry and said to himself, "What an ungrateful son of a troll. If I hadn't saved you earlier, you'd be fox puppy chow. And now you leave me here all alone." The silver fox continued to stare at Hansen, but did so with a puzzled expression. Hansen did not feel that the silver fox was being aggressive and intended to kill him. But it was natural for creatures to do this, and such habits were not easily hidden. Still, Hansen knew that the fox did not intend to murder him. But as the fox stood there, staring at him, Hansen couldn't help but feel uneasy. After all, a creature's whim can change in an instant. What if it became hungry in the next instant and decided to use Hansen for a snack? "Okay, lil guy, your bones have grown really strong, and your face has a holy aura. You'll undoubtedly grow to become something quite powerful in the future. But if you want to eat a sacred blood creature or something. Not me. My flesh is cheap and lacks the nutrients a young and healthy fox such as yourself would require. As Hansen tried to appease the silver fox, he slowly stepped backwards. But every step back that Hansen took, the silver fox stepped forwards. When Hansen went left, it went right. The way it stared seemed to suggest that it recognized him. Oh, what are you following me for? Hansen's mind raced, wondering what exactly was going on. All of a sudden, he thought, cats and dogs love to chase things. People would often throw balls for cats and dogs to catch or chase. The fox wasn't too different from a cat or a dog. Perhaps it shared the same habit. Hansen rummaged through his pockets, but was unable to find a ball. All he could find was a fist-sized bottle. Inside it, however, was an elixir worth of tens of thousands. This was the sort of medicine he wasn't willing to spend on Idongmu. With his own life on the line, however, he just bit down and lobbed the bottle away. Hansen was only trying to see what would happen before the silver fox thought of killing him. As he had hoped, the silver fox watched where the bottle went, sprang to its feet and chased after it. Hansen was delighted, as he hadn't been sure whether it would actually work. But the time he'd just bought himself, he immediately turned and started running. The last thing he wanted to do was displease a super creature, and after seeing what had happened to Idongmu, he was aware of the stakes. But Hansen hadn't run far when he saw the silver fox running across the white snow. Despite running as fast as he could, the silver fox was able to catch up with him with ease. In the silver fox's mouth, the creature was holding the bottle Hansen had thrown away. Hansen was flabbergasted at how quickly the silver fox had caught up with him, and knew that his own running speed was nowhere close enough. Now he was seriously considering the prospect of summoning his wings and taking to the skies. But the next second, Hansen gave up that idea. Hansen stopped running, feeling hopeless. The silver fox also stopped and stood just a meter away. They placed the medicine bottle on the ground near Hansen's feet. Good boy. Hansen forced a smile. He wanted to pat the silver fox on his head and stroke it in congratulations, but he only stretched his arms out at half length before freezing. This was a super creature. If he reached out his hand and the silver fox did not think kindly of his approach and got angry, he would likely lose his arm. Seeing Hansen stop moving, the silver fox walked closer. It gently approached his leg and began licking it. Hansen was so terrified that he almost kicked the silver fox in the face. But when he looked down, he noticed that the silver fox was licking him where Idongmu had bit him. Although the bleeding had stopped, the wound remained. But when the silver fox started licking it, something strange happened. With his own two eyes, Hansen witnessed his wounds mysteriously vanish. He froze, almost unable to believe that the silver fox was healing him. The silver fox took a few steps back and, like a cute little girl, stood to look up at him with a tilted head. Hansen was perplexed, and all at once, he felt his entire past understanding of creatures had not only been subverted but flipped entirely on its head. He tried reaching out his hand again and fought to stroke the silver fox's head. But still, a fear nagged at him not to do it. His hand froze in place once more. But then the silver fox elegantly approached and actively placed its own head into the palms of Hansen's hand. It closed its eyes and rubbed its head there, seeming to enjoy it. Is this thing really a wild creature? Hansen wasn't quite sure what to say, so he engaged the silver fox himself. With that same hand, he began stroking its head. The silver fox was like a little girl, in the way that it was cute when Hansen stroked its head. Just seeing the creature made you want to hug it. No, foxes are cunning. Is this thing just tricking me into hugging it? Maybe it's making me lower my guard, so it can attack me before I get a chance to defend myself. Hansen told himself. This was a super creature, after all, so he couldn't afford to drop his guard. But after Hansen stroked the silver fox a few more times, the creature walked between his legs and used its body to rub against them. It genuinely seemed as if it wanted some love. Although it was docile and friendly at this point in time, there was no guarantee it would always be like this. If the silver fox turned violent after Hansen returned home with it, it would be a disaster. Across the ice fields, no one could bear the wrath of a super creature, and Hansen was taken back to the image of the blue seahorse that had burned down the seabed shelter. That gave him a chill. That can't bring it back. There's no way I'd be able to bring it back. Hansen watched the cute silver fox sit lovingly in his arms but had to resist. Though it hurt him to do so, he returned it to the ground. Little fox, it's not that I don't want to bring you with me. And if I was on my own I would. I just can't risk bringing you back in the presence of others. If something happened, it wouldn't just be my problem. You should go home, Hansen told the silver fox, then turned around and left. but the silver fox didn't listen, and continued following and mimicking every step Hansen took. If he stepped forward, it did too. If Hansen stopped, it would too. Looking back at the silver fox that refused to be left behind, Hansen picked him up once more. Like a little cat, he dug into Hansen's chest and was the cutest thing. Fine, I will take you to the Crystal Palace. If something happens there, at least you won't be harming anyone else. Hansen brought out his wings, and with the silver fox in his arms, took to the skies. He'd have to hide the silver fox before meeting the evolvers, too. The tall tales that might be spun out of this turn of events would be dizzy. I'll just leave them to wait where they are, then. They are the ones that chose not to accompany me. After all, there is no harm in leaving them in the freezing cold for a little while longer. Hansen clutched the silver fox tightly as he flew higher and higher to leave the area. As Hansen prepared to fly towards the ice lake, he saw a multitude of ice snakes jump out from the snow in the ice valley. It was strange, the place had been empty before. There was an extra large ice snake amongst them, as well, and his entire body was scaled in silver. It gleamed like the snow, and it was 100 meters long. It was a terrible sight. The silver-eyed ice snake king. Hansen was shocked. When he entered the valley and traversed it earlier, he had caught no sight of it. Where did it come from? Hansen's heart jumped, and he returned down to the snow valley. But when he returned, he saw the Snake King and its clan return deep beneath the snow. I suppose it is because of you. Hansen landed on the snow valley, but he could not now glimpse the faintest shadow of an ice snake. Even the king itself had disappeared. The silver fox remained in Hansen's arms, pretending to be asleep. He wasn't sure whether it understood what he was saying, or if the creature just didn't care. Calmly, it just wagged its tail. He flew outside the ice valley again and put the silver fox down on the peak of a snowy mountain. Then he saw the ice snakes return to the surface. You wait for me here, okay? Hansen told the silver fox and then flew back towards the valley. This time, the silver fox didn't follow Hansen. It stood on top of the mountain, watching Hansen descend into the valley. Hansen was going solo towards the giant pit of snakes, but this time, they did not return to below the surface. What's more, a legion of snakes leapt up and attempted to thwart his airborne descent. The Snake King's eyes were like braziers of silver light, staring at Hansen. The beast spread open its own wings, and the two horns on its head shone like beacons. Like some deadly creature of ancient history, it charged towards Hansen. They really must have escaped due to the silver fox's presence. Hansen put away his wings and hit the snow with treading cloud, reverting to his previous attempt to grab the Snake King's attention and draw it to the valley's entrance. To go up against such a giant monster, Hansen lacked the faith to battle it on his own, not to mention the amount of other smaller snakes he would have to deal with at the same time. So Hansen settled for his original plan of leading the Snake King out and giving the evolvers something to do. No matter how bad they were, he could at least get them to deal with any smaller snakes trying to prevent the slaying of their leader. Although they were afraid of them, if he led them out of the valley, the snow wouldn't be thick enough to cloak them. In such conditions, the evolvers could take on the snakes with far greater ease. Hansen was unsure whether the Snake King had been suppressed by the presence of a silver fox in recent times because its insane temper was far beyond Hansen's expectations. Without reprieve or thought, it mindlessly went after Hansen. Its speed was surprising, with its silver wings allowing it to lash, twirl, and snap its way through the sky in its pursuit of Hansen. Its mouth was perpetually open, ready to gobble up its desired prey. Hansen was no sluggard, though, as he dodged the attempted bites with ease. The faint trail he left in the snow made a zigzag, however, as he kept dodging the Snake King and its minions. Before long, he hadn't made it through to outside the snow valley. Wang Liang and the other evolvers outside the valley were still waiting in nervous anticipation to see Hansen return. He's been gone too long. I bet you he was killed by the Snake King. If that were true, how come we have not heard anything? I bet he didn't even see the Snake King. It would probably be best to wait a little longer. If we leave now, and he does indeed return, we won't be able to explain our desertion. But he's been gone for so long. There is no way he'll be coming back now, after all this time. Just wait a bit longer. If we've waited this long already, what does it matter if we wait a little more? The day is gone, anyway. While everyone was talking, they suddenly heard movement from the valley. When they went to look, all of their mouths dropped to the ground. They saw Hansen running like a madman out of the valley, and behind him, a monstrous sea of snakes flying, twirling, writhing, and slithering after him. In the middle, one that looked like a dragon was in the hottest pursuit. Its wings were outstretched as it tried to capture Hansen, and each snap missed him only by a second. The insane sight sent their pulses racing in fear. Hansen drew nearer to the valley's exit. Wang Liang hurried the group into battle formation. They were ready to fight against the Snake King. The party was composed of elite evolvers. Some of them were currently serving in the army, whereas some others had retired. Having all shared military experience, they were hardened warriors with phenomenal abilities in battle. They did not fear the fight to come. After he had established their formation, Hansen had just about brought the Snake King and its following of lesser ice snakes out of the valley. Without the deep snow to hide their bodies, however, they all looked like colossal foes. When the battle began, Hansen ceased running. He summoned his ghost pod claws and started to attack the Snake King. Dawn. Hansen dodged the gaping maw of the silver eye Snake King, and with the ghost pod claws, countered to slice off one of its silver scales. The Snake King's silver flesh was too thick to fully pierce, however, and all that was inflicted upon it were 3 scratch marks. They weren't proper cuts, and were far from critical, life-threatening wounds. Without the cover of the snow, the ordinary and mutant ice snakes were unable to compete with the elites. In a great reckoning, countless ice snakes were slain. As each snake dyed the earth a sickly red, their corpses were sent flying with great force. Now, the 10 evolvers had surrounded the Snake King. The beast was fierce, wild, and mad. When it lifted its rear, it lashed around to smash numerous glaciers. Given how crazy it was, Hansen and his fellow fighters did not dare to fight the creature head-on, face to face. Giant creatures were born powerfully, and substantially outperformed humans. The silver eye Snake King's scales were solid, and its flesh was thick. Although Hansen and his party gave the beast a series of strong attacks, none seemed likelier to kill the beast than the last. Instead, all they did was amplify the Snake King's rage to even greater degree. Seeing the Snake King behaving like a sordid monster from some ancient tale, Hansen felt gloomy. The ghost pod claws were too short, and didn't seem viable to fight a creature as large as that. If he had a longer weapon, perhaps then he would stand a chance. Right now, though, Hansen was glad to have brought along Wang Liang and the rest of the elites. Had he not, he didn't think he could do anything or have the opportunity to fight the Snake King without the interference of countless lesser ice snakes. You guys go on ahead, I'll take a break, Hansen shouted to Wang Liang as he left the battlefield. Wang Liang thought to himself, we've come here to help you slay the Snake King. We're risking our lives enough, and now you run off. You're obscene. As he cursed Hansen, Wang Liang caught a glimpse of a certain flame. A red firebird that looked like a phoenix appeared, drawn from Hansen's body. The flames were scorching hot, and they rose high into the air. In just a moment, the flames had encircled the entire area. Wang Liang noticed that his and his party's beast soul powers had been greatly increased. Though he was surprised, he was very glad and said, Halo Beast Soul, and for such a large effective range. I wonder if it is a sacred blood beast soul. The beast soul powers of everyone else in the party were also greatly increased, and it felt to them that the fight had become easier. The pressure had most certainly eased up, and they looked extremely pleased. Hansen left the desert bird behind on the battlefield and continued on his way, but he made sure to keep his eye on how the others did, as they battled the Snake King in his absence. Of the 10 of them, 6 of them were using a sacred blood weapon. 3 of the 6 were employing heavy weapons. There was a lance, a great axe, and a hammer. These 3 posed the greatest threat to the Snake King. But still, the scales were too hard and they could not damage it. It's only a sacred blood class creature. It cannot be indestructible. It must possess a weak point somewhere. Hansen watched the Snake King's every movement, but no weak point could be found. The silver scales could endure 10 strikes from the evolvers, and with such defense, there was no need for it to move around and protect certain parts of its body. It could bear the brunt of any attack. An evolver was unable to dodge in time and was struck by the Snake King's tail. He was sent flying for over 10 meters and roughly crashed into the ground. He spat blood from his mouth, but the hit he had taken was not life-threatening. Quickly, he brought himself back up to his feet. Hansen jumped back into fray, filling in the spot left by the hurt evolver. Boss, the Snake King's scales are too tough. It's impossible for us to kill it. Why don't we retreat and think of something else? Wang Liang shouted across the battlefield as he continued to engage with the enemy. Hansen, however, did not respond. He continued to fight the Snake King, while paying extra attention to the movements of the enemy. He wanted to wait a while longer so that the poison of the ghost pod claws might take effect. But there was no change in the Snake King's behavior, and it didn't seem to work. It was as powerful as ever. The flesh and bones of the Snake King are tough. Even if I use Yin Force, it would probably be useless. Perhaps I could use Yin Force on its head and damage its brain. Hansen thought to himself. If he truly attempted striking the Snake King's head, this would be a perilous move. One mistake would result in a big bite, courtesy of the Snake King's cavernous mouth. The meter-long, frostbite-primed snake teeth seemed as if they could slice right through and kill you before the frostbite could even take effect. 10. The Snake King twirled, lashing away one more revolver. So powerful was the strike that the longsword was wholly bent out of shape. This beast was a fearsome thing. Boss, we must fall back. We cannot slay this creature. A voice called out from one of the evolvers. Hansen responded, keep fighting. Everybody must obey my commands. If any of you choose not to, don't bother returning to the shelter. Go find Dong Lin and explain your desertion. Wang Lian, move to your left by 3 meters and attack its left side. Zhao Pian, move right by 2 meters, forward 1 meter and strike its right wing. Hansen barked the orders. Wang Liang had little choice but to listen and follow Hansen's orders. The two who had been given instructions, however, weren't exactly sure what their boss was hoping to achieve. The formation they were in was the result of much practice and perfect synchronicity between the elite evolvers. Never had they been issued a command that altered this formation. And no matter how smart they thought Hansen was, they didn't think he could randomly come up with a brand new and better formation, and nor did they want him to, because these changes could result in an accident. It was now down to an individual's talent. The daily training and practice of blocking, dodging, and striking were more important than ever. No immediate command such as this could put them in a better position than they already were. But Hansen was different. The way he viewed things, the men were just pawns on a chessboard. His use of the Dongsu Sutra was increasing, and this allowed him to control them as if he were a game player. Earlier, when Hansen had quit the fight for a brief while, he didn't just stop to observe the beast and try to find its weak points. He was also observing the skills and abilities of Wang Liang and his people. He had to gain a greater understanding of their powers to be able to issue the right commands. At first, Wang Liang was forced to listen to Hansen's command despite lacking any desire to, but his opinion quickly changed. And so too did the opinions of the rest of the party. For when their formation changed, their new positions made it considerably easier to fight the Snake King. They were all further from danger, and no one received another blow from the Snake King. They were beginning to really admire Hansen. They all used to be soldiers, so they were familiar with the qualities and traits that it took to be a brilliant commander. But in regards to Hansen, they had never seen someone command others so well, and in such a calm and informal manner. It was unbelievable. Wang Liang and the other evolvers greatly admired Hansen. No one they had served under could command with the talent he did. Battles were instant, moment-to-moment affairs that morphed and changed every second. To command people ahead of time in such a way was remarkable, because if anyone else had issued commands, by the time the evolvers performed what they were told, the opportunity to do anything more would be gone. But Hansen had just commanded 10 people with amazing efficiency. He was quick in issuing his commands, that was to be expected. But his words were never rushed. Taking such impeccable orders relieved Wang Liang and his people from a great deal of stress, so they were able to do far more. Wang Liang and his people admired Hansen with the respect usually reserved for a religious deity. In the army, powerful people typically gain the respect of others, but for genuine admiration, one had to command others calmly and with grace, leading their troops on to victory. At last, the Snake King's head had practically been delivered to Hansen. This was his long-awaited opportunity. He jumped to the Snake King's head with a fist fueled by a power that could shatter a mountain. With his yin force, Hansen used his fist to drill inside the monster's head. The damage he inflicted to the skull of the Snake King was the critical hit he had been waiting for, and it was terribly injured as a result. Roar! The Snake King screamed and writhed in agony. When he lowered its head, its body's shape was all wrong. Although the creature looked just as strong and fierce as before, its composure and form was not as solid as before the hit. Hansen's heart was gladdened, thrilled that the yin force seemed to work. The blast must have rattled the Snake King's brain, ruining its form. Hansen continued to issue his commands to Wang Liang and the other evolvers to fight. Before long, the Snake King's head was in front of Hansen once more. He delivered another yin force punch. Following the second hit, it was as if the Snake King was drunk, as it began to lose control of its body. Wang Liang was surprised at how things seemed to be turning out, and he too was happy. Now, feeling assured of victory, and under the impeccable leadership of Hansen, they put even greater efforts into the fight. Their admiration of the man did nothing but rise. When Hansen struck the Snake King's head for the third time, the beast could no longer resist. It collapsed to the ground, writhing, twisting, and contorting in pain. Please give me your beast soul. I have to get a beast soul. Hallelujah. May the sweet mother of baby Jesus bless me. Hansen was cheering in his heart and soul. Sacred blood creature hunted. Silver Eye Ice Snake King. The beast's soul has been acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random numeric amount of sacred blood genopoints, ranging from 0 to 10. Hearing that sound, Hansen wanted to scream aloud in merriment. I love you, Saint Mary. But he only shouted in his heart. Once the Snake King had been killed, the other ice snakes did not want to give their lives to fight the evolvers. Quickly, they raced back to the Ice Valley. The results of the battle in which they had just been victorious were strewn everywhere, with countless corpses of ice snakes and the Snake King itself. There were even a few mutant-class creatures piled up. Following the battle, they each received a couple of ice snake beast souls. Although most were an ordinary class, a lucky few received mutant beast souls. They had killed far more ice snakes than they had expected, but their haul of loot was their greatest ever. I will leave them for you, but go and find someone to help transfer the bodies of the Snake King and the ice snakes back, Hansen hurriedly said, and then left. Wang Liang and the rest of the evolvers had no problem obeying Hansen's commands, because his leadership abilities had earned every ounce of their faith, trust, and respect. Hansen walked in a circle, returning to the top of the snowy mountain. The little silver fox was still patiently awaiting his return, and its hopeful eyes made Hansen wonder whether the little thing would have waited there forever if he had not come back. Seeing Hansen return, the silver fox elegantly approached his legs again. The big fluffy tail hooked his legs like it had before, and the fox rubbed his head up and down against them again, too. Hansen was beginning to grow fond of the silver fox. He secretly wished that it was just an ordinary creature, though, so he could have it by his side with relative ease. Hansen fed a black crystal to the Silver Eye Ice Snake King, and then brought the silver fox back with him. On his way, he encountered several other humans and passed by them nervously. He held the fox extra tight, afraid that it might attack someone. It was fortunate, then, that the silver fox gave no particular reaction at all. That put Hansen at ease, for at least now, the silver fox was behaving unlike any other super creature, and it didn't seem likely to attack humans on sight. Back inside the Crystal Palace, the silver fox acted its usual self. It remained calm even when at close proximity to Zero, who was later able to hug the fox. The silver fox seemed indeed quite tame. The ice snake and snake king flesh that Wang Liang delivered was split evenly between Hansen and each evolver. Everyone received an equal amount, which brought in the mutual respect within the group, ensuring that they could work together in the future. Hansen prepared a whole meal for himself with the snake king flesh he had received, and when he was full, gave the rest to the angels. The size of the Snake King was indeed too big, and if he spent the whole month eating it, he wasn't sure if he'd receive a single sacred blood geno point from it. With such uncertainty, he didn't bother to spend too much time eating it. Hansen had now returned to what was previously known as the Black God Shelter due to a report he had received of someone looking for him. Hansen went to meet this person, and was surprised to see that it was Yi Dongmu. He hadn't seen him in quite a while, but his injuries had now fully healed and his vicious wounds were no longer visible. You don't need to thank me. I was just trying to help. You can let it go. Of course, if you really want to reward me, I'd gladly accept the sum of a few billion in cash, Hansen said. There is an opportunity coming up that will allow you to make some sweet money. Are you up for it? Sure. What sort of money are we talking about? I am going to learn a hyper-geno art, and if you become my training partner, I'll pay you. He Dongmu explained the deal as straight as an arrow. Why me? Hansen was now quite curious. Because you are really good at assassinations, and your power is tremendous. He Dongmu said. You have good taste. I like that you are honest. And, sure, I can be your training partner, but I'm an honest man, too. I must tell you that I don't come cheap. Hansen was interested in which hyper-geno art He Dongmu was looking to learn. They were both accomplished when it came to their learned assassination skills, but if Yi Dongmu was serious enough about learning this skill, then perhaps it would prove useful for Hansen, too. A problem that can be solved with money is not a problem, Yi Dongmu stated sagely. Yi Dongmu had the money it took to say something like this. Although Hansen asked for a really high price, Yi Dongmu didn't even blink and agreed. He didn't even try to haggle or bargain with Hansen. Hansen then brought Yi Dongmu to the Black God Shelter's arena. He really wanted the hyper-geno art he was looking to learn. Yi Dongmu was still using a dagger. The way that he would strike was near untraceable, and it was obvious he had a grasp of the very essence of assassination skills. He had come a long way since Hansen had first seen him in the first shelter. What Yi Dongmu was learning was a skill to slash shockingly fast. But power and speed burst out in under a second, so it was almost like a duplication of the tornado knife skill. And Yi Dongmu was naturally powerful. The force put into each blisteringly fast strike was remarkable. This is some powerful skill, Hansen took a few steps back and dodged Yi Dongwu's dagger. Hansen himself was highly talented when it came to assassination skills, but he had a great mind too, which allowed for him to sense any incoming attacks. If it had been anyone else, the dagger would have found a new home in their belly. I still have a long way to go. Yi Dongwu wasn't yet satisfied with the skill, and he made sure he kept training with Hansen. Hansen had met a lot of people who loved to fight over the years, but none were as crazy as Yi Dongwu. If Hansen had not requested a break so that he could eat, he assumed Yi Dongwu would have been practicing with him all day, every day. From what Hansen could see, Yi Dongwu's skill was already really powerful. Not many evolvers would be able to dodge his first strike. But still, Yi Dongwu was not completely satisfied. Do you have to put in this much effort? Are you that desperate to master it? Hansen couldn't help but ask as he ate. I have to. I have no choice but to perfect this skill if I am to beat Coin. Yi Dongwu's face looked solemn. The reason why Yi Dongwu was trying to learn this skill so much was so that he could beat Hansen himself. Hansen looked at Yi Dongwu curiously, and with a look that almost suggested pity. In his heart, he thought, you could have looked for someone else to train with, yet you came to me. And now I know all about your secret skill and what to expect if we fight. No matter how hard you train, you will never beat me, Yi Dongwu. Hansen had let his Aqua Reaper live with Ningyu because he wanted to gather the secrets of the Ning family from Ningyu. But Ningyu was aware of the abilities possessed by an Aqua Reaper, so he was able to control its behavior and mind and limited the amount of intelligence it provided Hansen. Usually, Ningyu was alone and unwilling to see anyone. He would just wait. When he had nothing to do, he would just remain by himself and read Buddha books for about 10 hours straight. It seemed as if he was extremely focused on learning Buddhism and Tao. He did not rush about and he was not nervous, so Hansen could learn nothing. If Son of Heaven was half as good as Ningyu, I would most likely have died at Steel Armor Shelter. Hansen was now lamenting the past, and in his heart, the dread he felt about Ningyu was increasing. Luckily, however, Ningyu had been made host to a parasite by the Aqua Reaper. If he hadn't been, Hansen would be extremely nervous. Hansen then remembered something that Son of Heaven used to say, in regards to if Hansen had come too late, he couldn't become his enemy. In the past, Son of Heaven was a proud person. Now Hansen wondered how Son of Heaven would treat him if they met again. Would he be considered a friend or a foe? Hansen was intrigued and wanted to find out, but his purpose there was to buy a sword. Beyond that, he didn't want to see Son of Heaven or get himself into any sort of trouble. Surprisingly, the road to the demon shelter had been a relatively smooth one. Entering the demon shelter, Hansen parted ways with the merchant group. He looked around, trying to locate shops that traded in the beast souls he was searching for. It truly was a royal shelter, as stores that sold beast souls were everywhere and there were even certain streets dedicated to the trade. Other shops even offered 1 or 2 sacred blood beast souls as a premium product to go along with their primary wares. Hansen had only to browse 4 shops before he found a sacred blood beast soul. Unfortunately for him, it was a great sword, which rendered it unsuitable for his dual skill. To find the sword-type beast soul he was looking for, Hansen made sure to peruse the offers of every beast soul shop he could enter. Eventually, he came to a shop called Precious Beasts, and he found that it hosted a sword to which he immediately took a liking. Unfortunately, it wasn't a proper product, and so the owner of the store presented Hansen with a beast soul booklet. It was a colored one, provided by the Alliance. There was plenty of information on the sword he was wanting, and the booklet even illustrated the monster it had dropped from. It was a purple copper ancient sword, and its body was red and purple. It looked rather delicate, and the blade was engraved with numerous mystical carvings. It was quite beautiful, with nothing menacing about its appearance. The sword in its entirety was about 4 feet in length. The sword was longer than the Silver Eye-Eyed Snake King Beast Soul Sword, and slightly wider too. Their appearances were almost polar opposites, as the purple copper ancient sword looked quite righteous against the malevolent-looking Snake King sword. Taking everything about its appearance into account, Hansen deemed it suitable for his dual skill. This was initially a skill that required 2 people to cast, but Hansen had modified and morphed it into one that could be used by himself. This was perfect for his right hand, whereas the other was perfect for his left. Having the righteous and the wicked working together would maximize the efficiency of the dual sword skill. The booklet stated that the purple copper ancient sword came from a mascot beast. Its appearance was not unlike a copper-maned lion, plated with purple scales. Its face was one of portent and mystique, and its formal name was Ancient Mascot Beast. Boss, what are you selling this ancient sword beast soul for? Hansen pointed at the mascot beast in the booklet. I apologize, but this is a premium product of the store. For this, we can only trade. The owner had a soft-sounding voice, but the hint of a boast sugared his words. The ancient sword beast's soul had had numerous prospective buyers, but the owner had never received a satisfactory offer. It was believed that the owner deliberately turned down each offer to leave the purple copper ancient sword there in the store in order to attract potential customers. However misleading this was, it worked, and patrons flocked to the store due to the sight of the sword, made it comparable to a number of bigger stores in the shelter. The owner hence viewed the mascot beast's soul as a lucky charm and did not relish selling it. What would it take to trade it with you? The owner said that he wanted to trade a beast's soul for a beast's soul, which matched Hansen's initial idea. The then owner frowned and looked at Hansen, saying, "For my sword, I could only accept a berserk sacred blood beast's soul in exchange. Also, it would have to be a sword-type beast's soul. What about other types of berserk sacred blood beast souls?" Hansen eyed the owner curiously. No. The owner shut down the counter offer immediately. Hansen caught on to the fact that owner had no real intention of selling the sword. If someone did indeed possess a berserk sacred blood beast soul sword, who in their right mind would swap it for an ordinary sacred blood beast soul sword? Such a transaction would not be remotely fair. Brother, you are saying that you want to trade a berserk sacred blood beast soul for this sword? A curious man had overheard Hansen's offer. Yes, but the owner isn't willing to make the trade, Hansen said, with a hopeless sigh. What kind of berserk sacred blood beast soul are we talking about here? If it is suitable, I have a sacred blood beast soul, the man said. Is it a sacred blood beast soul sword? It is a sword I require, Hansen said. Yes, the man replied quickly. He then summoned an icy-looking steel sword. Unfortunately for Hansen, it was a great sword. Its body was wide and its length exceeded 5 feet. It wasn't the sort that Hansen was looking for. What is your beast soul? Summon it and let me take a look, the man suggested. Hansen squinted his eyes. Although he did not plan